prolific poet, essayist, translator, and anthologist Pierre Joris died today after a long battle with cancer. Back in 2011, he wrote us these 7 minutes on translation. A prolific author, editor, and translator of more than 60 books, he was one of the foremost translators of avant-garde poetry into both French and English. Among his many significant contributions, he translated several works of the Romanian-born French poet and Holocaust survivor, Paul Celan. His other translations include books by Pablo Picasso, Maurice Blancat, Edmund Jabes, Habib Tengur, Kurt Schwitters, and Michel Bolteau into English, and by Carl Solomon, Allen Ginsberg, Jack Kerouac, Gregory Corso, Pete Townsend, Julian Beck, and Sam Shepard into French. In her message, Nicole wrote, "We will gather at Main Gate, Greenwood Cemetery, 500, 25th Street, 5th Avenue and 25th Street, Brooklyn, on Friday, February 28th at 9:45 a.m. and proceed to the gravesite. At 2 p.m., we will meet at Sunny's Bar in Red Hook, 253 Conover Street, Brooklyn." Exactly 1 month ago, on the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, Pierre wrote his last Instagram post. Today is the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, where between 1940 and 1945, of the 1.3 million people sent there, 1.1 million were murdered. Pierre Joris, born in Strasbourg, France on July 14, 1946, was brought up in Luxembourg, where he graduated from the Lycée Classique in Dijkerk in 1964. From age 18 onwards, he moved between Europe, the United States, and North Africa, and held both Luxembourgish and American citizenship. After early studies in medicine in Paris, he decided to make poetry his career. In 1967, he moved to the U.S., where he earned a B.A. honors at Bard College before moving to New York City, where he edited the underground arts magazine Corpus from 1969 to 1970. After moving to London, England in 1971, Joris founded the literary magazine Sixpack with William Prescott, which published poetry and translations from the US, Europe, and beyond. Between 1972 and 1975, Joris pursued graduate work, first in cultural studies at the University of London's Institute of United States Studies, and then at Essex University, where he earned an M.A. in the theory and practice of literary translation in 1975. He published his first chapbook of poems the fifth season in 1972. Joris was married to Nicole Parafit. Here is my translation of Paul Celan's Toadsfuge, the first and still the major poem about the death camps, and the one recording we have of Celan reading the poem. Pierre Joris is a poet, essayist, anthologist, and translator, each an aspect of multidimensional art-making rarely seen among American poets. His poetry and poetics are interwoven with his anthologies of 20th century, free-thinking world poetry, with Jerome Rothenberg, and of the poetry of the Maghreb, with Habib Tengur, which in turn are an extension of his translations: Celan, Adonis, Blancat, Schwitters, Picasso, Safa Fathi, Meddeb, and C. Joris's works are never solemn, but they acknowledge the darkness that surrounds. As Robert Creeley once put it, that we are always behind our ideals, hopes, aspirations, premonitions, regrets, fears, behind both in the sense of supporting and after, trying to catch up, desperately for the most part, but in these poems not desperate but fortunate, in good humors and with humor. American poetry is born in second languages. It is our bounty and the secret of our success, if we have any, as much as Samson's long hair was, once upon a time, the source of his strength. That's why any attempt to homogenize and assimilate undermines the foundations of our poetics. In Memoriam, Pierre Joris. Joris's work is marked by a rare virtue for an American poet: courage, fierce and loving. Everybody is always talking about effect, but no one ever does anything about it. We used to say lifts your spirits, but that applies more to Thanksgiving balloons than to verse that challenges. I want a poetry and poetics, like Joris's, that change my mind, puts me in the sway of currents of resistance and change, where the courage is not just what is said but what is refused, the sanctity of the fixed place, nation or ideal, banner or standard. It's not just the tyranny of monolingualism that Joris's verse contests, it's the tyranny of all forms of monomania. Single-mindedness in perspective, style, politics, form, language, identity, desire. I speak in voices / always / other people's voices / 1,000 mouths. We all turned away from virtues when that meant some uppity guy telling us the way we lead our lives is base. What happens if the bass speaks in a basso profundo, as in being pro-fun with doing more than the done? Intellectus is not a dirty word. While so much of American poetry culture has run from thick historical context and wit as if they were a European disease, Joris has made a poetry that overthrows the hierarchies but not the minding, tending, churning, plowing, fermenting, and fomenting. I want to claim Joris as an American poet par excellence, but that is only if we understand American as dissolving into the image nation, Robin Blasser's term. The city which is syntax, of non-national possibility. To be neither here nor there, French nor German, Luxembourgish nor Americanish, is to inhabit a provisionality among and between, a toggling that creates a space of rhythmic intensities, true movement unencumbered, that confounds binaries and repels axiomatic allegiances. In an Aleph Ba, Joris speaks of the azig connecting to orphan zag, evoking the nomadic condition of letters before they coalesce into words, what he calls in another poem the zigzag nomad. The distance from the orphan zag to the zig of history or place or name is irreducible. The space from zig to zag is the antinomian space between lips / be silk between / be between the ephemeral and the invariant. This is a space Joris claims as the nomadic possibility of poetry and thought, what sometimes goes by the name of imagination but also fancy, emptiness, and negation. Joris's daily song is a tracing of a definite but undefined course. The poet recognizes the necessity of a rhetorical address from the center of nowhere. Nowhere but still always here, at this long-delayed hearing that determines neither guilt nor innocence but rather makes waves, to actualize copability, the ability to cope, which along with adaptation, translation, miscegenation, and elan is a guiding force of Joris's beguiling works.